A lot of memories. I still look for the stacks that aren't here anymore.
You know, for East Helenans, it was a center of pride. It was the economy, it was the infrastructure.
I remember the smelter just being always a presence, just kind of a way of life.
It was always kind of rumored that maybe it will shut down someday. It was shocking and, just a scary time.
We were a tight-knit family. We treated that plant like it was our home.
Hello, I'm Marian Davidson, joining you from East Helena for this special on the 25th anniversary of the closing of the Asarco smelter. We'll show you the history of the smelter, the impact to both the community and the environment, and the future of the former Asarco properties. But first, we start with the smeltermen, some of whom were able to tour the site for the first time in 25 years.
How's it going, good Rodney?
How's it going?
Good, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good.
25 years, I guess, yeah, since the plant shut down. You know, I had 22 years in a plant, but I was probably in the middle of the pack when it come to the layoff, so I was up there and, got laid off pretty quick, but it's been that long. It's just a big grassy field now, it looks like, yeah.
I retired about 6 months before they shut down, but it was still a pretty good blow.
A lot of memories. I still look for the stacks that aren't here anymore, just out of habit. A flood of memories every time I drive by or stop by.
It's great to see some of these guys I haven't seen in 20-some years. You know, some of them I see every once in a while, but there's a lot of them I haven't seen in 20 years. So it's good to see them again.
I was a purchasing agent out here, and all the stuff that I bought, and it just amazes me going around and seeing this. I mean, I think what amazes me the most is how they've done it all. I mean, it's just in 25 years. I mean,
well, yeah. Well, look how the whole area has changed.
True.
It was a very good paying job. It used to pay for school. You can't pay for school now. They supported a lot of stuff.
They did. They supported almost everything. Yeah. The fire department, everything. Yeah. They did a lot.
A piece of slag from years gone by, and this slag is supposed to be a byproduct, so our goal was, we wanted to recover the gold, the silver, and the lead. There's a lot of precious metals up on this slag pile. It's full of money. Great to see this group here today. I mean, we were a tight-knit family. We treated that plant like it was our home,
Only the slag pile remains, but the Asarco smelter was responsible for a lot of the East Helena we know today. The history of the site actually begins 25 miles south in Wicks, where silver, lead, and zinc deposits were discovered in 1864. By 1888, the material was in such demand that a large smelter was built in East Helena by the Helena and Livingston Lead Smelting Company. In 1898, the 160-acre site was bought by American Smelting and Refining Company, or Asarco. The custom smelter processed ore from all over to be refined, with the operation turning more than 70,000 tons of bullion each year. That metal was then shipped to other facilities to be refined further. As the smelter grew, so too did East Helena.
It was the economy, it was the infrastructure, it was the place where people had their jobs, and it was always looming. You could hear it all the time.
Though the work came with risk, the smelter paid well. People from all over the country and world moved to East Helena to work.
It's kind of like the mines in Butte, where you had a lot of different people from various ethnicities. There's a Serbian cemetery in East Helena, for instance.
In 1984, after nearly a century of refining lead ore, the EPA classified the area as a Superfund site, finding it contaminated with high levels of lead, arsenic, and other heavy metals. In 1999, Grupo Mexico, one of the largest mining companies in the world, bought Asarco. They closed the East Helena smelter 2 years later.
It was always kind of rumored that maybe it will shut down someday, but it was definitely, when it happened, it was shocking and, just a scary time.
And in August 2009, the smelter's iconic stacks came down. But you can still find echoes of its history around East Helena today. Like here. Before this was the East Helena Historical Museum, it was the East Helena Depot for Northern Pacific Railroad.
It saw all that ore going through that, millions of dollars. How many millions of dollars of ore went through there on the railroad.
The smelter is gone, stacks torn down, but the impact remains. In 2005, Asarco declared bankruptcy, and that led to a settlement in 2009. That settlement transferred more than 4,000 acres and $138 million to the Montana Environmental Trust Group. Asarco also transferred an additional $39.5 million directly to the state of Montana for natural resource damages. The primary goals of the trust group have been to limit contamination, clean up the properties, and identify ways they can benefit the community. As for the slag pile, Metallica Commodities has been shipping slag to a buyer in South Korea, but that stopped in 2024 due to supply chain issues. Another distributor is interested, but a buyer has yet to be found. There are not a lot of facilities that can handle the slag.
There's one zinc smelter that's in Canada, but they're not set up to receive material from East Helena. We have shipped material to them. But it's really Asia, it's South Korea.
If a buyer is not found relatively soon, they will likely look into capping the site with soil and see if it can be turned into more recreation opportunities. Now, there can be anxiety living near a Superfund site, but significant strides have been made to address the environmental impacts of the smelter. East Helena kid John Riley shows us the cleanup over the years and work coming up in the future.
This entire mountain of slag in East Helena represents more than a century of smelting operations here at the former Asarco site. Now, any type of large smelting or mining operation is going to have an environmental impact. For East Helena, it was some pretty significant impacts.
In the 1880s, when operations started, environmental considerations weren't really known.
Bridget Williams grew up in the Helena area and now helps oversee the remediation work at the East Helena Superfund site for the EPA. The main environmental impacts the EPA has been addressing are contaminated soil and groundwater. During the initial investigation, high levels of lead and arsenic were detected in topsoil. This was a result of over a century of dust from the smelter stacks drifting to the nearby areas.
The groundwater contamination is a little bit different. There's no lead in the groundwater or the surface water. It's arsenic and selenium in the groundwater.
The plume of arsenic is mainly contained to the area by the slag pile, but the selenium plumes stretch all the way to Canyon Ferry Road. However, mitigation efforts have seen that plume reduced by an area of about 4,000 feet. Beginning in the 1990s, while the smelter was still in operation, efforts were made to identify yards that had high levels of lead and replace the top 18 inches of dirt. Steve Tennis with the county's Lead Education and Assistance Program works to provide awareness about potential health impacts, especially in kids.
I worry about the people that have never been tested and don't know, and then the harmful effects of having that lead exposure, those elevated levels in kids, and then they didn't know about it until it's too late.
Exposures to high levels of lead can cause damage to the brain and nervous system. In kids, it can cause developmental and behavioral conditions. Beginning this summer, the EPA will begin replacing more yards in East Helena based on new federal guidance on acceptable lead levels. The work is completely free to the homeowner.
We're working really well with individualized homeowners. Like, we already have people that have signed on for the 2026 field season, and they're like, I don't want only grass. I want to have this gravel area or whatever. So, we will work with individual property owners to get exactly what they want.
Generations of families have lived and thrived in East Helena. People are just encouraged to take advantage of the free testing and make sure their levels are not dangerous.
There's been a lot of really good progress in the community in keeping it clean and keeping their community members safe.
In East Helena, John Riley, MTN News.
Welcome back. There is a lot of pride in this community. Just ask anyone who grew up here and they will tell you they are from East Helena. A lot of the former Asarco properties have been transformed to benefit a community that wants to keep its identity. MTN's Madeline Heath reports.
Behind me is what's left of the former Asarco site, and it powered East Helena's economy. But now, a quarter century later, it's about more than just rehabilitation. It's about preserving history and leaving something that future generations will be proud of.
We're literally writing history as we go here in real time, which is very cool, and it's an honor to be a part of this.
The former Asarco smelter site and properties are now at the center of a major transformation, guided by the Montana Environmental Trust Group and community partners. That work included the creation of Prickly Pear Park. The 240-acre recreation and wildlife area opened last year and has already seen more than 75,000 visitors.
This community got together and decided one of our priorities is open space and parks and recreation, and let's create a new identity for East Helena for the next 100 years.
Prickly Pear Land Trust says the shift from the past to now hasn't been easy, but it reflects decades of cleanup and community effort.
So it's been a very emotional progression and evolution from then to now. I think we have fully arrived in a place where people have lived through the evolution to a point where now the future is really bright.
The redevelopment effort stretches beyond recreation, such as Prickly Pear Elementary and East Helena High.
A big part of that has been taking ownership of property that was originally owned by Asarco, that was all around the community of East Helena, mitigating those properties for lead contamination and then putting them to use for new purposes for the community.
Another former Asarco property is the nearby Rose Hills development, with plans for 1,500 homes to help with Montana's housing crisis.
That next phase has to benefit this community and has to be done thoughtfully and carefully, with future generations in mind.
Even as the landscape changes, community leaders say the past won't be forgotten.
We're not going to hide from that story, and even though that hillside will be a sledding hill within a couple of years, and it'll be a nice green hillside, the legacy of the smelter will live on.
Reporting in East Helena, Madeline Heath, MTN News.
Welcome back, everyone. Along with working, Asarco employees also fielded a company baseball team, the Smelterites, and probably one of the most famous members, country western legend, Charlie Pride. MTN's Johnny Walker introduces us to one of the last living Smelterites.
Asarco invested a lot into the East Helena community during their years of operation, and one of Asarco's biggest hits was the semi-pro baseball team they sponsored called the East Helena Smelterites. The Smelterites played ball in East Helena for decades, up until about the mid-1960s. Terry Screener played for the Smelterites in the early 60s. He describes the team as guys who needed a summer job and could play baseball.
A gentleman by the name of Kess Wriggler here would find out if they could play ball or whatever, and if it looked like they could or whatever, then he would do whatever he could to get him a job at the Smelter. So they'd work from 7 to 3 and then play ball after that.
But fast forward 60 years later, and the Smelterites' play on the diamond is just one small piece of their lasting legacy. Country music legend Charlie Pride pitched and played infield for the Smelterites, with dreams of becoming a major league ball player preceding the 30 Billboard #1 country hits he would go on to produce. MTN caught up with Pride in early 2020, just months before his death.
My thing was to go to the major leagues and break all the records and set new ones by the time I was 35 or 36. Didn't sing. That's kind of the way I had it planned, but it didn't work out that way. I started singing there, and that's where I started getting my recognition as singing in clubs and things like that. From there to here,
And then after the game, then he'd be in his uniform, and then he'd just be strumming on his guitar. He was quite a guy, and everybody knew him really well, and he knew everybody.
So Pride's Hall of Fame music career first grew roots in East Helena, playing gigs at local bars, and even earning $10 per game to sing the national anthem. And the rest is history. Reporting in East Helena, Johnny Walker, MTN Sports.
As East Helena looks to the future, there is no denying the impact of the smelter on this area. The landscape may change, but this is still a community forged by East Helena pride and a history not forgotten.